Grey Matter by Joe K. Jones. From Beare. Terror Tales M5. January 1953. Control, manipulation, destruction. Pranham Todd's laboratory echoed his shrill, triumphant laughter. Townspeople said the scientist had gone out of his mind since District Attorney Richard Foster had thwarted his scheme to inherit the Thompson fortune. They shunned the old house where Todd conducted his experiments. Nobody went there except dim-witted Woody, the handyman, who acted as Todd's porter and general servant. The flashing lights and intricate apparatus fascinated him. Todd's weird laugh rose as he watched a large glass jar that glowed like radium in the darkened laboratory. Soft, thin, colorless as water, the fluid in the jar pulsed as though it were a living thing. It moved and shifted restlessly, splashing against the sides of its glass prison, trying to leap out. Todd was talking to it. "You are the first artificial mind in all the history of mankind. Soon, you will have your chance to work. Once you are infused into a man's body, he becomes my slave. I shall be master of the whole world and live like a Roman emperor. Years ago, I would have lived in ease if that meddling lawyer Foster had not intervened. Now at last I have an instrument of revenge. Foster will be our first victim." Hatred for Dick Foster had seethed inside the scientist's mind for years, driving him to the edge of reason. He remembered that scene in court when Foster had snatched millions from his grasp. Todd had successfully impersonated Mrs. Thompson's long-lost son, leaping every legal hurdle. The judge had almost awarded him the money when Foster, thumbing through a diary of the dead woman, had found a record of a birthmark on the leg of the missing child. Pranham Todd had no such birthmark, and his claim had been disqualified after a second investigation. Todd had vowed revenge on Foster, and now at last he had the means to do it, without risk to himself. As he laughed, the thin mass in the jar leaped and foamed, as though it too were laughing and exulting over the future wonders it would perform, as though it were impatient to demonstrate its awful powers. "Be still," he commanded. The obedient mind fluid at once lay flat and calm as a mirror. The only problem remaining for Todd was a living being to house the mind while it carried out Todd's evil work. Anyone would do it, because his own personality would be completely dominated by the mind Todd had created. Afterwards, he would withdraw the fluid. No memory would remain with the man who carried out Todd's orders unwillingly. The front door interrupted Todd's thinking. He glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 9 a.m. Woody was a little early today. He must have Todd's thoughts broke off. Woody, the perfect answer. He liked the apparatus, and if Todd told him he needed help, he would gladly volunteer. Todd admitted the handyman with a warmer welcome than usual. Woody was flattered. "Would you like to help me in an experiment?" Todd asked the slow-thinking porter. Woody's pale face flushed with pleasure. "Sure, Mr. Todd, I sure would," he grinned like a child. "Roll your sleeves up and put your arms into that jar," Todd ordered, indicating the glowing container. "Keep them there until I give the word." "Will it hurt?" Woody asked apprehensively. "No, it will make you feel good," Todd reassured him. Woody lowered his bare arms into the jar very gingerly. At first he felt nothing. He smiled and plunged in his arms up to the elbows. Slowly, a feeling of strength and wild energy rose inside him. His face became flushed. He looked at Todd questioningly. The scientist watched Woody's growing fright as the fluid disappeared and the glow of the jar dimmed. Woody felt as though he were being slowly drugged. A slight sound, almost a sigh, flew from his lips as the last spark of independent thought died within him. But the body of the porter was alert and alive as it had never been before. Woody's pale blue eyes sparkled with a new fire as they looked out from a ruddy face. The intelligence had taken control of Woody's body and now awaited orders. Todd was elated. Looking closely into the porter's face, he ordered, "Turn around!" Woody swung around with the speed of a released spring. "Bend over," Todd commanded. Woody doubled instantly like a jackknife. Todd deemed him ready for the ultimate test. "Listen closely," he began. "First, I want you to go to this address, and then—" Woody nodded eagerly, his fingers curving as the nature of his mission was explained to him. An hour later, the rejuvenated Woody knocked on the plate glass door marked Richard Foster, District Attorney. A voice inside called out a cheerful invitation to enter. Woody seated himself rigidly at the lawyer's desk. "What can I do for you?" The lawyer inquired. My name is Wood, the porter began, speaking as though he were reciting from memory. I have come here to demand an explanation for the forged diary you used in the Thompson will case. Forged diary? The puzzled lawyer repeated. I thought the Thompson will matter was closed long ago. As I recall it, a chemist named Todd was exposed as a fraud. But I don't believe I understand your interest in the Thompson will, Foster continued, puzzled by this mild-looking man who had made such a serious charge. You cheated me out of millions of dollars! Woody screamed, without betraying any emotion. Foster sensed something familiar in the infuriated tones. The shrill anger reminded him of the hearing where Todd had shouted threats of revenge. But this man was not Todd. There was something peculiar about it. He couldn't put his finger on the trouble. My good man, he began, but before he could continue, Woody had sprung around the desk and seized him by the throat. The surprised lawyer was fighting for his life. Foster was an athlete who had kept himself in condition, but he had to use all his strength to loosen the powerful grip on his throat. The curving fingers were as strong as steel. Naked hatred blazed from Woody's eyes. For a fleeting second, Foster thought he was looking at Todd. Slowly, painfully, he forced the hands from his throat. With a tremendous effort, he threw Woody back across the room against the wall of the office. Woody's head struck hard wood with a loud bump. Abruptly, he slumped to the floor. Foster was afraid he had killed him. Automatically, his lawyer's instinct made him look at his watch for future testimony. It was 10:30 a.m. The stunned man underwent a frightening transformation. As the lawyer watched, the ruddy complexion faded to a washed whiteness. The rigid body softened like a sack emptied of its contents. Woody lay there limp, as a stain spread slowly on the rug under his head. Foster bent to examine him, expecting a pouring wound. But the rug stain was colourless as water. The eyes of the porter fluttered open, as though he had just awakened. Who are you? He asked the lawyer. Where am I? Foster concealed his astonishment at the change in the man. One moment he had threatened his life, and the next was asking in weak wonder where he was. The bump on his head must have hurt him badly. Foster helped him to his feet. Where do you live? He asked. I'll help you home. Woody refused to be helped. I've got work to do, he muttered, and shuffled out slowly, a different man from the one who had knocked briskly on the door a few minutes earlier. Foster let him go, closed the door, and contemplated the stain on the rug. Later that morning, the district attorney's phone rang. Foster speaking, he answered. This is the chief of police calling. I'm out at Branham Todd's place. Todd is dead. His neighbors heard a terrible scream a while ago and called me. I found him lying on the floor of his laboratory, under a big glass jar. There's something peculiar about the body. There are no marks of any kind, but I suspect murder. The coroner can't find any cause of death. He says it must have happened about an hour ago, about 10:30. The end.
The preceding thrilling story has presented for your enjoyment. This classic work is now in the public domain, making it freely available to be shared and appreciated by all. Some elements may appear outdated or insensitive by today's standards, but we present this work in its original form to preserve its historical context and literary significance. Sit back, relax, and indulge in this timeless tale. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Every bit helps this channel grow. Thank you.